Picture this. You get a DM late at night that says, "Hi, you don't know me, but I think you might be my brother." And you're about to ignore it like every other weird message you get until they send you a photo that makes your jaw drop. It's them as a kid standing next to someone who looks exactly like your dad, but from 20 years ago. Same face, same body, even the same ugly polo shirt you've seen him wear thousands of times. Sorry, Dad. So you message this person back, trying to figure out the whole situation. But what happens next makes you realize your dad has a lot of explaining to do. So let me break down exactly what happened, because I know right now, this just sounds like an episode straight out of the Maury Show. It all started when I was sitting in bed one night, doing what I do every night, doom scrolling. But then I get a comment on one of my videos that says, "Tyler, this is serious. Check your DMs right now." So I click on their profile, go to messages, and see if they sent me anything. And of course, they did. And the message they sent said, "Hi, Tyler, you don't know me, but I think you might be my brother." Now, if you've ever seen literally any of the comments on all my videos, you would know that people just tend to say crazy stuff in there. I've had people DM me asking if I was their long-lost cousin, if I went to their high school, if I stole their lunch money in 3rd grade. Like, I don't even remember if I ate breakfast this morning, let alone if I robbed you in elementary school. One time, someone even messaged me asking if I was their Uber driver back in 2015. And I was like, I don't think so, considering the fact that I was 12. So when I saw this message, my first thought was, oh great, another person that thinks we're related because we both probably have brown hair and a horrible side profile. There's a reason I never turn my head in my videos. So I was about to just ignore the message and keep scrolling. But then they sent another message. And this message said, "I know this sounds crazy, but I'm pretty sure we have the same dad." And then he sent my dad's full name and date of birth. Although I still didn't believe anything this person was saying, now I was intrigued, because how does this random person know my dad's full name? That's not information I've ever posted online. I don't go around making videos like, "Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm gonna be revealing my dad's social security number." Like, my dad barely even uses social media. Up until last year, whenever I told him I was watching TikToks, he thought I meant that I was just staring at a clock. This man ain't even an unk, all right? He's Gramps. So the point is, there's no way this person should know my dad's information unless they knew him personally, and keep that in mind for the rest of the video. So now, I'm just sitting there looking at my phone like, what is going on? My first instinct was to think that this was just some elaborate prank. Maybe one of my friends put someone up to this as a joke, but that couldn't have been the truth because I don't have friends. So I decided to do what any rational person would do in this situation. I started stalking their page. And when I say stalking, I went full FBI mode. I'm zooming in on every photo, dissecting every caption, checking who they follow, looking at their tagged photos. I'm doing everything. And at first, their page seemed pretty normal. Just a bunch of random photos of food, sunset pictures, which, by the way, if there's a cool sunset outside, let me tell you guys, no one cares. We don't want to see 500 pictures on your story, okay? We go outside, we know there's a cool sunset. Okay, we don't all go outside, but most of us know there's a cool sunset. Anyways, their profile didn't have anything that screamed, "I'm a scammer trying to ruin your life." But then they sent me another message. And this message had a photo attached to it. And when I opened that photo, my jaw literally dropped. Like, I physically felt my mouth open. Pause. Because the photo they sent me was a picture of a kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, standing next to a man. But somehow, that man looked exactly like my dad. Not, oh, they have similar features, maybe they're 16th cousins. No, this was my dad from 20 years ago. I knew it. And the kid was standing there in this photo with a huge grin on his face, holding my dad's hand. I sat there staring at the photo for what felt like an hour. I was zooming in on every single detail. The background, the clothes, the way my dad was standing. I was examining the photo like I was trying to find Waldo. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized this was a real photo of my dad and this kid. And the reason I knew for sure was because of the shirt he was wearing in the photo. My dad would always wear these specific polo shirts back in the day. So I pulled out an old photo of my dad I had and compared it, and what would you know? It was the exact same shirt. So now I'm thinking, okay, either this is the most elaborate Photoshop job in my life, which still doesn't explain the shirt, or I might actually be related to this person. And let me tell you, the thought of my dad having a secret kid was terrifying to me, because my dad is the most straightforward, honest person I know. Like, he's the type of guy that will say you have something in your teeth even when you don't want him to say it. He's basically a Boy Scout in dad form. As far as I know, this man has never told a lie in his life. One time when I was a kid, I lost a tooth, put it under my pillow, waiting for the tooth fairy to come, but when I woke up, there was no money. So I asked my dad why the tooth fairy didn't come last night, and he said, "Tooth fairy had a little too much to drink last night, son." He was talking about himself. He was the tooth fairy. I was 6 years old. So the idea that he would hide something like having a whole nother child from me, that just didn't seem possible. And if this was true, it brought so many more questions. Like, does my mom know about this secret child? Okay, I guess that's the only other question it would have brought. But at the same time, this photo was right in front of me, and it looked way too real to be fake. Matter of fact, it couldn't have been fake. I knew that for sure. So I did what any person in my situation would do. I didn't tell my dad, not yet at least, because if this person was telling the truth, this meant my dad was hiding this from me my whole life. And I wanted to hear their whole side of the story before asking my dad about it. Plus, I didn't want to accuse my dad of something serious without being 100% sure about it. Because imagine if I just went up to him and was like, "Hey dad, Quick question. Some random person on the internet with 4 followers said that you have a secret kid. You know anything about that? He would probably just respond by saying that, no, he doesn't have a secret kid, but he also shouldn't have had me either. Just kidding, he wouldn't say that, I hope. So I responded to this person's messages and asked them how they got that photo. They told me they found it in an old box of their mom's stuff. He said his mom kept it hidden for years and they only found it because they were cleaning out their attic and moving. Then he told me that his mom dated my dad years before I was born. And he didn't know who his father was growing up apparently, but he only found out about it because of these pictures. I guess his mom always wanted to keep him away from his real dad for some reason. And honestly, the way he explained it seemed really believable. It wasn't some crazy dramatic story. It was just, your dad dated my mom, they broke up, and she was pregnant but didn't want to tell him. Which, unfortunately, this is something that happens in real life. I've seen enough episodes of The Maury Show to know this happens. But then things started getting even weirder because the more we talked, the more personal details he was sharing about my dad. He mentioned that his mom told him where my dad worked 20 years ago, which was a small company that doesn't even exist anymore. But somehow, he knew it. He knew the car my dad used to drive. And here's the thing, this is all pre-internet stuff that I only knew because my dad told me about it. So there's literally no way this person could have just Googled it. Their mom definitely had to actually know my dad, or at least that's what I thought at the time. And this is what made this whole thing so convincing because they weren't just saying generic stuff like, oh yeah, I know your dad is a nice guy. No, they were giving me specific details only someone who personally knew my dad would know. Unless this was literally the CIA agent that's in my phone right now, which I know you're watching. Don't think I forgot about you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I know you're sitting in a dark room right now, watching me through my camera lens. Just know I'm watching you right back, buddy. So now I'm starting to think I might have to consider the fact that this is real. Maybe my dad actually does have a secret kid. And I'm not gonna lie, the thought of this terrified me because my dad is in a loving relationship with my mom and this could ruin everything. If this was true, what else was my dad hiding? The more we messaged back and forth, the more I started to believe them. They told me about how their mom had always been secretive of their dad's identity, how he would ask about him growing up, but his mom would just change the subject. And honestly, he sounded like he was being genuine. He wasn't being dramatic or over the top about it. No, it just sounded like this dude wanted to know his real dad. And I started to feel bad for them because if what they were saying was true, then they spent their whole childhood not knowing who their dad was. And that's rough. Although LeBron didn't know his dad growing up, so maybe there are some benefits to it. After a few days of messaging my possible brother, I asked if he wanted to meet in person. They told me pretty quickly that they didn't live too far from me, and honestly, I was nervous to do this because meeting a potential sibling for the first time is scary enough, but meeting them under these circumstances, that's a whole different level of anxiety. Like, what do you even wear to that? My wolf tracksuit? I'm wearing the pants to that outfit right now, actually. You just can't tell. Matter of fact, you have no idea what's below the camera right now. Like, I'm actually getting a foot massage right now. You just can't see it. No, I'm not. That was a lie. But if anyone wants to give me one, okay, back to the video. So I was super scared to meet up with him, but I also knew if I wanted to get to the bottom of this, I had to do it. So I agreed. We decided to meet up at a coffee shop, which I figured would be a safe space in public, just in case. If things got weird, I could leave. Or say I got explosive diarrhea from the coffee, which actually does happen. The day of the meetup, I was a nervous wreck. If everything they were saying was true, this would be a life-altering day. And I didn't know if I was emotionally ready for that. Like, you're talking to a guy who cried during the Boss Baby movie, so I couldn't handle this. And like, also, if they were telling the truth, that would have meant that they were technically my brother. And I already got about 500 siblings in the comment sections of my videos, so I wouldn't have been surprised if I had another one. I got in my car, hands shaking, and drove to the coffee shop. When I finally walked in, he was already sitting there. The moment I saw him, I tried to look for any resemblance. Do they have my dad's nose, his smile, his receding hairline, his weirdly specific way of sneezing that sounds like a car horn? But honestly, I couldn't tell. They just looked like a normal person. Definitely could have been related, but I didn't know for sure. So I walked over, introduced myself to them, and sat down. But right away, when we started talking, something felt off. They were acting really nervous, like way more nervous than I was. And I'm the type of guy who gets scared ordering food at McDonald's because I think the worker's gonna roast me for stuttering. But I get it. This was a nerve-wracking situation for the both of us. So that's why I thought he was nervous in the first place. I was wrong though, because we started talking and they were giving me all these details about their life, about their mom, about how they found out about my dad. But the whole time, I just had this feeling in my gut like something was wrong. Because if you just found out you had a sibling, wouldn't you be asking a million questions about our dad, our family, and what he's like now? But they weren't doing any of that. The only time we really even talked about my dad was when I asked questions. They seemed to be more interested in me. So since this whole situation felt strange, I decided to test them. I pulled out my phone and said, hey, let's FaceTime my dad. I want to see his reaction when he looks at your face and hears your name. But the moment I said that, their face went pale. They looked like they'd just been told the unfortunate news that Jojo Siwa is not real. Then he starts stuttering, saying stuff like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't think he'd want to meet me. But I wasn't having it. I was like, no, if you're really my sibling, my dad will want to talk to you. Trust me. So I pulled up my dad's contact and hit the FaceTime button before they could say anything further. My dad answered after a few rings, and when his face popped up on the screen, I watched this person's reaction very carefully. Then I said to my dad, hey dad, this is my friend, and then I said their name. But this is where things got super confusing, because the moment I told my dad this person's name, my dad's face changed. The reaction on his face wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is my secret kid that I've been trying to hide from the whole world. It was more of a confused look. So now I had a confused look on my face too. My dad definitely seemed to recognize that name somehow, but he didn't mention it. We talked for like 45 seconds, and then I hung up the phone and said to this person, that was an interesting reaction from our dad, huh? He just agreed and went, yeah, he probably just doesn't want to deal with this right now. So since FaceTiming my dad just confused me even more, there was only one thing left to do to prove once and for all if this person was my sibling or not. So I said to them, you know what would be a great idea? Let's get a DNA test. I'll even pay for it. But to my surprise, they agreed. Like, without even breaking a sweat. They were just like, yeah, that's a great idea. Which threw me off, because why would someone who's lying agree to a DNA test? That doesn't make any sense. And between this and the fact that they literally had a picture with my dad at a young age and everything else he knew about him, I was starting to think, oh my goodness, this person is my brother. Which was devastating because bro was super handsome, so he definitely got the good genes if this was true. But there was just too many things adding up at this point for him to be lying. We ordered the DNA test right there in the coffee shop. One for me, one for him. After doing this, the coffee really actually was starting to hit my stomach, and I could feel that explosive diarrhea coming. So we both left, and I told them to text me when their DNA test arrived in the mail. About a week went by, and then my DNA test came in, and they told me theirs did too. We both took them, sent them back, and now we were awaiting the results. Then almost 2 weeks after this, the DNA results finally came back. I opened mine, I looked at mine, and it was pretty much what I expected. A bunch of Italian, part British by the way, which I was shocked by. But I guess that explains why I have a British accent, am I right? I'll shut up, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Should I just talk like this the rest of the video? No? Okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it again, I couldn't stop. But then I texted my potential sibling asking if their results came back in, and they only responded with 2 words. It did. Once again, I was terrified. I was about to find out for sure if I was related to this person and if my dad had been hiding a secret from me my whole life. I looked at the results, but immediately there was a huge red flag because their DNA test had a lot of European in it, but it didn't say Italian specifically. So what did that mean? Could they have had Italian in them and it just says European on the DNA test? Because for all my fellow Americans out there who may not know this, Italy is in Europe. So if you're Italian, you're European. Geography lesson. Is that geography? Whatever. Maybe this could have been the truth. I didn't know how this DNA test site worked, but why would mine say Italian and his didn't say that at all? It's not because we have different moms, because my mom doesn't have any Italian in her at all. So it was all from my dad, meaning we should have been the same exact percentage of Italian. So I sent them over my results and said, that's odd. Yours doesn't say you have any Italian specifically like mine. Their response to that was what I expected, saying, oh, it's probably just the European portion. So I called the company the DNA test came from, asking for a clarification on this, and this is what they told me. When it just says European rather than a specific country, it's because a lot of those countries are close to each other and they share similar DNA. So I said, oh, so if I took a DNA test that said Italian, but someone else's said just European, we could still have the same DNA, right? But they said no. If yours specifically says Italian and theirs just says European, you don't share the same DNA. The person saying they were my sibling had none of the same DNA as me, which meant we weren't related. So wait, they were just lying this whole time? They weren't actually my sibling? Then how did they have pics of my dad and know so much about his life 20 years ago? Is wrong. Well, buckle up, because I can promise you, whatever your guess is for what actually happened is not true. It's way more crazy and scary than you could have imagined, and you're about to find out why. So I told them about how we don't share any DNA at all and asked them to explain it, because I knew now they were at least not telling me the full truth. They said, well, maybe the test was wrong. Maybe I just got more of my mom's DNA and not my dad's. And I'm just sitting there like, bro, that's not how DNA works. Like, did you skip biology class? I mean, I did, but still, I know that you get 50% of your DNA from your mom and 50% from your dad. If my mom is 1% Jamaican, 99% American, and my dad is 100% Italian, that doesn't mean there's a possible chance I'm gonna come out of the womb saying, Bombo Clat. So if my dad was their dad, they would have Italian DNA. There's no way around it. The only possible way we could have been related was because of how dumb they were sounding at this point, which was a trait that we shared. So then I said to them, dude, just tell me the truth. We're not related, are we? And I'm waiting for them to text back something like, yeah, we aren't. I'm sorry I lied. But their response shocked me even more because they went, okay, I was lying, kinda. Yeah, I know you were lying, but what do you mean, kinda? And then they don't respond for like 10 minutes. And I'm just sitting there staring at my phone, waiting for them to text back. Multiple times, I could see 3 dots pop up like they're typing, and then they disappear. And then it happened again, and then they disappeared. But then finally, they start explaining everything, saying, okay, so we're not related, kind of. You're right about that. The DNA test proved it. But I wasn't just making everything up out of nowhere. There's a reason I did all this. And I'm sitting there like, okay, so what's the reason? How did you know what car my dad drove 20 years ago? How did you know where he worked? How did you know he played guitar? These are things that all aren't online. So I asked them this, and they respond with, well, you see, me and you are connected in a way. Bro is still talking like he thinks he's the Joker, not giving me straightforward answers. And I'm starting to get tired. So I just go, bro, just tell me exactly what's going on without being vague, or I'm gonna just block you and ask my dad about this situation. He says, okay, fine, I'll tell you everything. And finally, once and for all, I got the truth. And here it was. He said to me, my mom knows your dad really well. My heart starts racing. So I text back like, okay, what do you mean by that? They didn't actually have a kid, right? And he just texts back, they dated a long time ago, before you were born. And suddenly, it all clicks. That's how he knew what car my dad drove, where he worked, the fact that he played the guitar. Their mom told him everything. But that still didn't answer my biggest question. So I text back, okay, but if they dated before me and you were born, why do you have a picture standing next to my dad as a child? Once again, the 3 dots appear and then disappear like 5 times until they text me back saying, the photo of me with your dad wasn't real. I used AI. I took an old photo my mom had with your dad and added me to it. So I'm just staring at my phone in disbelief, thinking, this man is a psychopath. But even still, I didn't have the answer to the most important question. Why would you do this? And this is the crazy explanation that I don't even understand. They said, well, I was talking to my mom about her past relationships and she brought up someone with the last name Vitelli. So I was like, wait, I know a content creator with that last name, which isn't a very common one. So after some more talking, I found out it was your dad. I thought it was cool I had a connection to you and wanted to somehow meet you. But I figured if I just texted you saying, hey, my mom dated your dad, you wouldn't have responded. So I thought if I made you think we were related, you would answer. I blocked them right away after they told me this because I was right. This person was crazy. Like, I understand I have some followers and stuff, but I promise I am not cool enough to put all this effort in just to meet me. And plus, if you really do want to meet me that bad, there's a much simpler way of doing it by just standing outside your local crumble cookie. I promise you'll see me there.